Hey everybody, welcome. Good evening from an absolutely freezing blizzard conditions, South Wales in the UK. I hope that lots of people are going to join us tonight to ask some questions. I've got a few questions that people have posed through the day and a couple of themes that I wanted to cover myself, but really hoping that lots of people are going to drop in and engage and make this quite a fun session. It's very, very cold, so hopefully we can have some fun. Okie dokie, so first things first, introductions for people who haven't seen me before. My name's Catherine. I'm a 37-year-old mum of 3, plus a dog and a cat, which you may see walking across the screen if she decides to do that. I first started my journey into the ketogenic lifestyle just about 18 months ago now, when I was very overweight, very unwell, diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and at the age of 35, I think it was a bit of a wake-up call, really, that I was suffering from things that a person of my age really shouldn't be suffering from. And it was all to do with what I was eating, and I was very lucky to stumble across keto and to be with you now at my goal weight, feeling really, really good, healthy, although I am going a bit through the keto flu at the moment, having been in India for 3 weeks. So suffering a little bit, but very, very glad to be back on the ketogenic way of life. So the first thing I'm going to do then, while I'm waiting for people to join us and actually start asking other questions, is to follow some of the topics that have come up in the group quite a lot recently. And what happens is when people enter the group, they're coming from websites or other Facebook groups and other ideas about the ketogenic lifestyle. And when they hit the KISS group, some things are markedly markedly different from other places. So it's really good if we can sort of distinguish and clarify some of the stuff that people and some of the questions that people are coming in with to help out. Hi there. Okay, so the first thing then I want to clarify is this whole thing about sweeteners. Hi Lynn, hiya. Yeah, this whole thing about sweeteners. Now, when I was writing and trialing the KISS plan, I had to make a decision really quite early on about whether I would even allow any type of sweeteners in the plan. Now, originally, I was going to allow some natural sweeteners in the plan, but I think that from doing the trial and from doing reading around sweeteners and the impacts that has on the ketogenic lifestyle and people trying to stick to the ketogenic lifestyle, I did make the decision to actually say no to sweeteners, and hopefully I can give you some clarification and some understanding as to why I made what for some people was quite a big decision on it. Personally, not a fan of them anyway, so not a big deal for me. However, this has come as a bit of a surprise to some people who are coming into the group. So a little bit about sweeteners then. Well, the first thing to know is that there's different types of sweeteners, and they're not all created equal. And the first thing you need to know is something called the glycemic index. The glycemic index is how you rank sweet things on how quickly they have a calorific response in the body, and how much of a response you are going to have in terms of insulin and things like that. So the glycemic index is basically how sugary and how calorific and how sweet those sweeteners are going to be. So important to know about the glycemic index. So if you can imagine that normal refined white sugar has been given a glycemic index score of 100. So if you can imagine, that's 100%, okay? So it hits the blood sugar really, really quickly, and you'll have a big response to any refined sugar that's in your diet. However, other sweeteners also come into this glycemic index. They are not neutral. Your body does react to sweeteners as well. And this is the key thing that people need to understand. So, for example then, I'm trying to find my piece of paper I wrote down. So for example, if sugar's 100, something called sucrose, which you'll see used as instead of sugar, has a glycemic index of 65. Honey, for example, has a glycemic index of 50. Xylitol, which I've actually got in my cupboard because I made the mistake earlier in the year of buying some, still has a glycemic index of 12. Sorbitol 4, erythritol 1, inulin 1, and then things like stevia, aspartame, saccharin, sucralose have 0 on the glycemic index. But just because there's 0 on the glycemic index doesn't mean there's no response to these things, okay? Which is why I made the decision to completely avoid sweeteners in the KISS plan. So let me just break down why that is. The first thing is insulin. Now, most of the sweeteners on the market you will have an insulin response to, and there's some really interesting studies coming out showing that you can even get an insulin response from the sweet taste. So it's not necessarily the actual chemical that's producing the insulin response in the blood, but the brain is telling the body sweet food is coming, and the body is producing insulin preemptively. So even though some of these things may have a 0 on the glycemic index, because they taste sweet, the body thinks it's sweet. So there's some quite interesting studies going on showing that you can have an insulin response even if it's 0 on the glycemic index. So that's the one thing that you need to be aware of, and that's all of them. That includes even the most natural things in the world, like your stevias and all that. The brain thinks it's sweet, so the body responds, because ultimately the brain is in charge of those things, okay? So next thing then, some of these sweeteners, particularly the artificial sweeteners, have a really quite horrendous impact on the microbiome. So we're talking about the gut bacteria and the flora of the gut, which is really, really important. Now, it's actually, our metabolism is very much linked to the health of the bacteria in the gut, and also the diversity of the species of the bacteria of the gut. Very, very important. And artificial sweeteners have been shown to have a really negative effect on gut bacteria, particularly things like aspartame and other artificial sweeteners. So even though they're 0 on the glycemic index, because they are changing the nature of our gut bacteria, it can actually cause a raise in blood sugar. And again, once our blood sugar raises, what does the body do in order to combat that? It spikes insulin. So again, even though these things may be 0 on the glycemic index, they are causing increases in blood sugar and spikes of insulin. So to be aware of that. And of course, there's a whole other story when it comes to the microbiome and gut bacteria, and why we should actually be looking after our gut bacteria and things to do with autoimmune disease, inflammation, and things like that. So artificial sweeteners can have a really negative impact on that as well. Okay. The other thing is more of in terms of being able to enjoy the ketogenic lifestyle, find it easy, sustainable, and enjoyable. Now, what studies do know is that sweeteners mess with cravings. They really do. They keep our cravings for sweet stuff very much alive. So if we're actually looking to move away from these things on a permanent basis, keeping those cravings yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But that's why we're here. That's why we're having this discussion, to actually share this information and to get it out there. Things need to be clarified, because often, I spend a lot of time in other groups, not just my own group, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So this is just some clarity for people. So yeah, in terms of cravings, sweeteners can actually mess with the body's ability to moderate its own calorie intake. So people, for example, who have sweeteners in their diet are more likely to actually eat more calories than people who don't have artificial sweeteners, particularly in their diet. But any type of sweeteners has this effect. What our body is looking for is more of the same. We all know that our brains love sweet stuff, okay? We're hardwired to seek it out in the environment. So if you're eating things that have sweeteners in, you're naturally going to want more of that food. Now, when we're in a ketogenic state and we don't have sweeteners in the diet, I've always said that we can very much trust our hunger cues, because if we're on a high fat, low carb, whole foods diet, then the hormones which are controlling our hunger and our satisfaction are very much working properly. However, if you add sweeteners into this mix, you can no longer trust those hunger cues, because what the sweeteners have done has impacted your ability to naturally moderate the amount that you are eating. So another thing to keep in mind if you're making decisions on whether you're going to cut sweeteners out. Okay. Yeah, so really important to talk about it in terms of appetite, but also it will alter the way you taste all of your food. So for me, I don't have anything sweet in my diet at all. I don't eat fruit, I don't have sweeteners or anything else. But what I've discovered when removing all these things out is the real taste of food. So for example, there's a lot of things in my diet now which are sweet and I do really, really enjoy, and I get that sort of real enjoyment from them, whereas I never experienced the taste of those foods correctly before. So what I will say is you will make taste discoveries when you finally ditch sweet stuff out of your diet. You will discover that vegetables have natural sweetness, meat has natural sweetness, dairy products certainly have natural sweetness, and you will start to enjoy those foods and get the same sort of enjoyment and satisfaction from them as you used to be getting from sweet stuff. So definitely worth giving it a good go. Bought my anti-fresh cream. I know. It's crazy, isn't it? How overly sweet things that we would just not we wouldn't think of usually, but it's almost as if your senses are extra strong. But definitely, I know exactly what you mean. The smell of it is just really sickly to me. But there we are. Never mind. I'm gonna drink tea because for some reason my throat's gone all dry. Oh dear, it's sugar tea detox. It's not good, is it? Anyway, okay, so moving along then. Why did I say no to fruit? Well, again, this comes down to what we discovered in the trial for the KISS plan. So we had 60 people doing the trial, and during the 28 days of the trial, a lot of people were talking about craving fruit, craving sugar, and then they would start to put bits of fruit in their diet, and then suddenly I was seeing fruit every day in people's diets, so I took it out. Fruit contains not just glucose, but also something called fructose. Now fructose, not only is it highly addictive, but it's also one of the sugars that's associated with negative impacts on health. So I just took them out. I think when people are trying really hard to give up sugar, it is easier to take a hardline approach on things like fruit. Now, whether people remove fruit forever, I think that's a bit of a grey area. For me, I just don't bother buying any. But would I think it's terrible if someone's deeply in ketosis and very much in control of their diet was to add occasional berries? But what I did find is in those initial 28 days when people were starting their journey, fruit was not going well, and it just became a bit of a daily occurrence for a lot of people, and it's very difficult with sugar to actually moderate it, because like we've just explained, sugar and sweet things do actually impact our ability to moderate how much food we're eating. It makes us overeat. So I took fruit out. Basically, it's as simple as that. After 28 days, if someone's deeply in ketosis and very much aware of the potential impact that some of these sweet foods could have, we're all adults, knock yourself out, go and enjoy it. But it's just to make you aware that there could be an impact. It could bring back cravings. It could stall your weight loss. It could spike in insulin, those sorts of things. So just to be aware, really. Okie dokie. So moving along then, has anyone got any more questions about sweeteners or why I made the personal decision to exclude them? Or have you heard maybe differing things? I know I've certainly heard lots of differing things on sweeteners and whether they're keto friendly or not. Pop the questions or comments in the comments below the video, and I will answer anything that you have. Okay, so moving along then, the next thing I personally wanted to talk about is something that I spend a lot of my time not arguing, but certainly debating with people in the ketogenic community. There's a lot of keto groups focused very much on weight loss that talk about fat as being a lever to weight loss, and they talk about not having to eat fat on a ketogenic diet, and the fact they believe that if you eat too much fat, you could actually gain weight. And firstly, that's nonsense. But there's a good reason to it. And what I wanted to talk to you about tonight is why fat is vital to a ketogenic lifestyle, why the ketogenic lifestyle works because of fat and not despite of fat, and what actually happens if you start to reduce the amount of fat in a ketogenic lifestyle, ketogenic diet, or start out with not enough fat in your diet. So the first thing then is, obviously, without enough fat in your diet, the diet is no longer ketogenic. The ketogenic diet is high fat, moderate protein, and low in carb. If you don't have that high fat aspect to the diet, you're talking about a low carb diet or a high protein diet, more like the Atkins diet used to be back in the day. So in order to be a truly ketogenic diet, we actually do have the high fat aspect. It's a vital part. And in fact, we're looking to achieve 75, even 80% of our calories during the day from healthy, good fat. So that fat is really important. So why is that? Well, there's a reason that we moderate our protein. We moderate our protein because excess protein is just stress on the body because it needs to be excreted. Obviously, protein is vital for the body. All our cells need protein in order to rebuild. However, once we've got enough for our cells to rebuild and to keep us healthy, any excess protein just needs to be got rid of by the body. And it's actually the kidneys that do this work. So any excess protein is potentially putting increased stress on our kidneys and leading to things like kidney stones and those sorts of things. So we don't eat excess protein because we know potentially that could lead us into trouble. So fat is really, really vital because we need to hit our calories. We need to provide our body with fuel. And if we're not overeating protein and we're restricting carbs because we know that they make us fat, then we need to have something in our diet to actually make up that energy need that we have each day. So fat is there to provide our body with the energy it needs to be healthy. you know, not just survive, but actually thrive and be fit and healthy and energetic, and younger, and feeling just generally good. So fat is really, really important, because without it, you end up on a high protein diet, which is something very different. Or if you don't add it and you still continue on moderate protein, you just lose, you know, 75% of the calories that you need in a day, which is not good. So where did I get to on this then? Okay, so something I read today was really interesting, in that the body monitors our external environment via the food that we eat. So our metabolism, our liver, our pancreas, our thyroid, and all the glands of the body, our adrenals and everything else, understand what's going on in our environment by what we're putting into our bodies. So for example, if we calorie restrict, our body will understand that we're going through a period of hardship in our environment. Now, what the body will do, it will drop our basal metabolic rate in order to preserve our fat stores and our weight during that period. So what we won't do if we calorie restrict for a long time is lose a lot of weight, because the basal metabolic rate will drop significantly to compensate for that, because what it doesn't want to do is lose a lot of weight if there's not much food in the environment. It wants to keep us alive. So what it'll do instead is turn off some of the non-essential functions of the body, and what you'll hear people saying is that they're losing their hair. Well, hair growth is a non-essential function of the body. So if the body feels that there's not enough calories in the environment, if things are really scarce, then what it will do is stop growing hair, for example. There's lots of other things that will happen as well, but that's just one example. And I hear people losing their hair all the time, and I get really concerned about it, because the last thing you should be doing is losing your hair. It means that you've told your body that there is something really nasty in the environment that's taking all your food away. So in order to tell our bodies that food is plentiful, what we need to do is provide it with enough calories to maintain our metabolism and everything else. And we do that through eating fat, because like we said, we moderate our protein and we're low in carbs. So we need that fat to tell our body that things are plentiful, that it is free to burn fat and to get lean and get fit and get healthy, because our environment is optimal. There is loads of food, there's loads of calories in our environment, so it's okay for our bodies to not just survive, but thrive and turn on all the mechanisms and the functions of the body. We talk about reproductive hormones. You know, why do people start getting their cycle again in keto? Well, because finally the body's like, great, fantastic, I've got all this fat, all these nutrients, all these calories. We can finally start reproducing, we can finally start healing, and we can finally start getting rid of all this body fat that we've been storing for times of trouble, because things are so good. So it's another reason that you're telling your body about your environment by the food that you're putting in it. That's the way that your metabolism understands what's going on around you. Okay. Used to eat 30 pounds a week. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and we've always been told, haven't we, that fruit is good for us. However, there's very limited evidence to support that, because most of what's in fruit is in green vegetables, which are lower in carbs and don't make us as fat. So yeah. But anyway, moving along, you've got to think of fruit as nature's candy. It's not an everyday thing. We wouldn't give our kids sweets all day, every day. And fruit has to be the same when you're a grown adult and you're watching your weight. Okie dokie. So let's talk about this thing of fat being a lever. So in a lot of groups, what I hear is that people saying, yeah, you've got to hit your protein macros, you've got to stay under your carbohydrate ones, but fat's a lever, and you can dial back your dietary fat to start burning body fat. Now, what that means is dropping your calories. That's what it means, because you end up eating less. And like we've explained, if you dial back your fat, your body just thinks the environment is not optimal. So what it will do is drop your metabolic rate. Of course, initially, you're going to lose weight. Of course you are, because the body's going to have to burn something. But eventually, your metabolism will compensate for any reduction in your calories, and you will stall. So it's not about dialing back fat. That's not how we do it. We still need to keep them there. We need the calories to be high because we want to maintain metabolism. We don't lose weight long term by ruining our metabolism, ruining our thyroid, ruining our hormones, ruining our skin and our nails and our hair. That is not the game. We're all here to look better, not worse. And we're all here to feel better, not worse. So dialing back fat is not the way to do it. So fat is not a lever. Fat is absolutely the key ingredient for a successful ketogenic lifestyle. And, you know, I would say if you're still not convinced by that, go and do some reading. It's all I've been doing for the last 3 weeks is reading the actual studies to try and give you as much evidence-based information as I can. Okie dokie. So where did I get to? Yeah, so if we're not dialing back fat then in order to accelerate weight loss or to achieve weight loss, how are we doing it? The way we do it is we feast and we fast. The way to get our body burning body fat instead of dietary fat is to give it enough time to do it. This is all that's needed really is time. So there's points in the day or some days where we absolutely feast. We're hungry, we're ready to eat, and we're going to eat well, and we bring our calories right up. And this is why you'll see me eating meals which are 1,000 calories plus just in one meal. And that's because I want to maintain my metabolism. Every now and again, I want my body to go, whoa, this is amazing. And to really come to life and to make my digestion really work to sort through all those calories and burn off, you know, everything else. You feel really warm and you feel fantastic because you've got all this energy. And then what I'll do is stop eating. So we do things like intermittent fasting, we do alternate day fasting, and if you can maintain your calories, then consider even longer if that's what you want to do. But that's how you do it. You don't drop the amount of fat, you don't drop calories. What you do is you keep your metabolism high by feasting and fasting. So you don't eat tiny meals, you don't snack, you don't dial back on anything, you don't worry about fat, no, you feast and you fast. This is the absolute way that we are designed to eat. When we've made a kill, when our hunting has gone well, we're going to feast, and then it'll be some time before the next meal. But during that time, our metabolism will stay high because the last thing we ate was fantastic. And the metabolism stays high, knowing that food is plentiful in the environment, but we need to stay active and we need to stay alert in order to make the next kill. So that's really important, that's the way we do it. We don't dial back, we don't calorie restrict. We allow our bodies enough time during the day, overnight, extended periods of actually having burnt off our dietary fat, because remember, when insulin is low, that we burn it, we don't store it, so we're going to burn it. And then once it's burnt, we've got that period of time where we can make that easy switch, because we're already fat adapted. We can make an easy switch into burning body fat, and you won't even notice, you won't even feel that energy dip. You'll just go straight into burning your body fat instead. So that's the way you do it. And for people who are fat is our friend. And the number of people who say they're keto who are scared of fat, I don't get it. I really don't. I do wonder what they're reading. But unfortunately, a lot of the groups where trackers are involved, and there's these sort of calorie deficits and fat is a lever and calories count and all this stuff is like a hangover from all the diets that have gone before. And when you come into the keto world, you need to leave all those things behind and really understand how the body works on a physiological level. And our bodies do not want to be calorie restricted. If they are calorie restricted, they're going to hold on to everything it's got. You know, you're going to have to fight your body every inch of the way because your metabolism is going to want to slow down to prevent you losing weight. In a plentiful, bountiful environment, then it's much easier for the body to let go of body fat. Yeah, keep it simple. Absolutely. If it stands still, I put butter. Yeah, I completely understand. I feel similar. I definitely feel similar. Everything's got a bit of butter on it at least. But yeah, absolutely. And the amount of fat that we use keeps our carbs and keeps our protein low, because what fat does is makes us full, it makes us energetic, it allows us to actually switch on those natural calorie intake modulation that we do. It's all, we're inbuilt. We're not built to get fat. We're built to stay perfectly healthy, and the only thing that disrupts that balance is carbs and sweet stuff, because that sort of impacts how we actually monitor how much we're eating. It switches those things off and sends us into a bit of a binge. So yeah, if we could just switch those things off, then we will start to regulate more of our body's actual calorie needs. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely, Sherry. Some people will produce loads and loads of ketones, other people won't. But usually, as long as you're not, a type 1 diabetic with high blood sugars as well, high levels of ketones are totally and utterly normal. What I found personally is that after several months of being ketogenic, I could no longer be aware of ketones in my urine or my breath or anything else, because my body was doing sort of the supply and demand thing quite well. So I wasn't spilling over loads and loads of ketones. But high ketones is absolutely fine. If you are drinking and you are eating and you're feeling good, which is the main thing, then absolutely no problem whatsoever. You can trust your body to provide you with as many ketones as you need. Not only that, those strips are not particularly accurate anyway. So usually you can't really trust the measurement of it anyway. Any sort of pink color on those strips is a sign of ketosis, but in terms of the shade of the color is not particularly accurate, so don't worry about that. Keto diet is the simplest diet I've ever seen. Yeah, absolutely. If you think about it, what we eat is what our ancestors would have found in our local environment. So we're talking about game, so meat, we're talking about fat, usually would have been the animal fat that they could have had, and the sort of greenery and the vegetable matter that they would have been able to sort of forage, particularly in the northern hemisphere, in this temperate region where we are. Food would have been incredibly seasonal. There's nothing out there right now other than meat, so for a lot of the year we were very, very much dependent on animals and animal fat, with only a couple of months during the summer where we would eat fruit and fatten up, basically. So yeah, very, very simple. And the only thing I think that we need to fight against, we need to challenge, is the last 40 years since the Second World War, where for some reason we've turned everything we knew about food and nutrition upside down. So we do need to unlearn the last few decades, and that's the biggest challenge, I think, and that's the most common things that people are coming up against is that fear, because for so long that we've been told that fat makes us fat, and I hope people see that I'm living proof that that's not the case. If it was the case, I would be a lot bigger than I am now. Okay. Yeah, I mean, keto breath is not great, Sherry, but again, it tends to be quite temporary. So what I will say to you is just keep going, and usually the body does start to regulate how much ketones it's producing. But it's a fantastic sign that you've got it, that you've nailed it, that you've got your carbs nice and low, and that your body isn't actually storing fat. So that's a fantastic sign. Okie dokie. Where did I get to? All right. Yeah, so that's really the two big things I wanted to talk about tonight: the sweeteners, and whether we should really be worrying about calories and fat. And hopefully what we've talked about tonight has given you a really good clarification and an understanding as to why on the KISS plan you won't see any sweet foods. I really feel dodgy about fake desserts and things that sort of trick the brain, and sort of we use as a crutch to sort of feed our cravings and things like that. I am a little bit of a, I don't know, I'm quite black and white, I guess, when it comes to what's helpful and what's not. And I'll usually give people, the truth. Sometimes it's a little bit of tough love, maybe, but I think it's really important. And I've been there. This is stuff I've done personally. I bought all the sweeteners. I've been on all the recipes. I've tried the cookies, and I've done it. I've been there, and I can tell you for a fact that last time I made cookies with sweetener, I ate the whole batch myself pretty much, and then wanted more. It completely and utterly threw me off where I had been for months. So I know this is the truth, and hopefully it helps a lot of people. But yeah, in terms of fat, you will see me nagging people. Where's the fat? Where's the fat? Add more fat. It's really, really important, and I will continue to do so, and I'll continue to debate in other groups about calorie deficits and whether the word calorie deficits should be anywhere near keto, because as far as I'm concerned, they're two completely opposing theories of weight loss. If calorie deficit worked, then the vast majority of us would now be thin. It would be simple to do that. And I know my dad always said, just eat less. And if it were that easy, then I'm sure we all would have done it. But unfortunately, with carbohydrates and sugar and sweeteners in the diet, eating less is not usually an option. And of course, if we do eat less, our metabolism will compensate and drop, and we won't be able to lose weight anyway. So yeah, this is definitely nothing to do with calories. You have to maintain your calories to maintain health and well-being. It's very, very important. If you want to be able to do things in your life, you want to feel energetic, you want to do sports, you want to be fit and active, then you need fat. You absolutely need to be hitting those calories and fat. If you are worried about the amount you're eating, now I don't do tracking or macros. If you are worried though, I will look at what you're eating, and we can go through it to make sure that you are giving your body what it needs. I'm happy to go through it, because I know for some people who've calorie restricted for a long time, they may find it difficult to understand how much food they should be eating, and often the amount of food, and especially the amount of fat, can be quite a shock if you're used to sort of a low fat, low calorie diet. So happy to do that. However, eventually, if you're using the KISS food lists, you've seen the KISS plate with the proportions, and you're spending time with us and understanding that if you're eating whole foods and you're eating ketogenic foods and you're listening to your body and you're giving yourself time to actually burn body fat, it will work. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does work. But if you need any support, then do reach out, and I will have a look for you and either reassure you or set you on the path to making sure that you're actually hitting what your body needs. Okie dokie. Don't have to worry about calories. Yeah, absolutely. And why should we? You know, which other animals other than domesticated ones have issues with obesity? You know, in fact, I think my dog's a bit overweight, and I realised that she started to eat things like my daughter's toast, and I think it's the carbs that have snuck in there, and suddenly she's got a bit of a bread thing going on. So yeah, it could well be that. But yeah, absolutely. If you can think of anything and you want to discuss it, then please do. We can do it here, or we can do it privately. It's absolutely fine. You can drop me a message. Over the next couple of days, I'm going to spend time actually writing the 28-day meal plan and the beginner's guide. I'm going to be back and forth asking you guys what sort of information that you would expect to see in that beginner's guide, what meals you would hope to see. We've been through the trial, so luckily I have the vast majority of the information that I need, but I may well be in and out of the group, making sure that what I'm writing is actually fit for purpose, and it answers a lot of the questions that people who are new to this way of life want answered. So yeah, I know a lot of people aren't watching this live, so if you're watching this and it's not the time that I said it would be, then feel free to ask questions anyway, and I will make sure that I answer you afterwards, basically, after the video. So, okie dokie. So I'm going to head off then, guys. I'm going to wish you a fantastic evening. Be safe in the snow. Don't go driving in the snow. Just stay home. Cook amazing keto food. Put butter in it, and stay warm. Anyway, cheerio, guys. Bye.